This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. NBA action. Hotter than a tea kettle on Mercury soil right now. Just... I always like putting a smile on my boy's face. You know what I mean?
Coming up good, man. Yeah, you got that alliteration, brother. You know, yeah. the rapping skills consistently show their face.
It somehow just, comes in at the right time. Yes. As always, man, let me roll out the red carpet to my right hand, man. www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, Mr. Shaw? Obviously, there's much that we could discuss, and there probably will be, given the state of where the NBA is. It's like MASH Unit 2024 right now, and I'm sure dudes cannot wait. They probably have changed up their Christmas gift a little bit. Yeah. Be like, you know what I'm saying? Hook me up with that Therabody. Hook me up with that. Hook me up with those what we call cryo sessions. Hook me up with something that's going to get me back on the mend a lot sooner than later, man. Like, it's just been remarkable, the number of injuries that have taken place. And it's not even so much the fact, Shaw, that we're talking about injuries that have happened like after the first game. Like, these are injuries that have literally happened like over the last maybe week, maybe not even a week, maybe 3-5 days.
Yeah, I mean, we had discussed a pretty lengthy list of guys last week, our last episode, and now, a pretty robust group of names that people know and recognize are going to be out for a pretty significant amount of time. And in both conferences, you lose ground, you lose a major player, you lose 3-4 games, that's 4 or 5 spots potentially in the standings, and that's not an exaggeration in any way. So I, as you alluded to, the holiday spirit, it's really interesting that Black Friday deals are already starting here, so early. And I'm sure these teams could utilize some health. If there's some health for sale, I think all these teams and these medical staffs will be looking for it, man, because it's really looking MASH unit style, as you like to allude to so many times.
Absolutely, man. So along with that part of the conversation, we'll also pivot and talk a little bit about the Golden State Warriors. Is there a resurgence in the Bay area, right? Like, good old Dubs, man. They retooled up. Now, whether or not it's just fugazi or this is for real, we'll at least kind of set we'll set the tone and give people an opportunity for them to really look in and weigh in on that aspect of it. And then we also have, one of my favorite segments. I call it Impress Me. We're talking about dudes who have been given the opportunity, have given their time to shine, and they are making the most of it. And whether you're somebody that is actually following the NBA, somebody who's probably in the fantasy basketball space, you're looking for some guys that probably are still available on your waiver wire or whatever the case may be, you have no idea what this dude's name is, we're basically putting their names on the spotlight. We're giving them a pedestal. We're giving them a time to shine with our Impress Me segment. So we got a lot of good stuff going on. Before we get into to all of that, as always, be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Leader. Show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you see us on YouTube, then you see the blue and white logo, you know that we rocks with the 19 Media Group family. So be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com. Also know that not only does this episode, but also the previous shows that we drop, part of the Baseline family, go to www.thebaselinenba.com. That's the home website for you to check out all of our previous episodes and this one, which will be dropping shortly. Before we get into news and notes, Shaw, I want to get your take real quick on where we think we'll be as we're on the precipice of Joel Embiid basically being given the green light, right? He's expected to start his first game this week as we're recording this podcast. And I know that when we did our last episode, we put a lot of emphasis about where the Philadelphia 76ers are, where Joel Embiid needs to be, and where I think the fan base is. I don't know if we put enough emphasis on, now that we have found out that he was suspended for his actions against the a reporter. And there's been a lot of fallout in his mindset, his demeanor, his tone, his attitude. What are your expectations given what has happened now? Do you think that this makes this, we're going to see an angry Joel Embiid, and I'm so serious Joel Embiid, you know what I'm saying? Or do we see this as, Joel Embiid, is going to go out here and he's just going to do Joe, right? Joe's going to handle Joe, and, be damned, whether or not this is going to be successful or if it falls short, especially now, which we'll talk about in a few moments regarding the situation with Tyrese Maxey being out for extended period of time. There's no greater window that I think you can give an opportunity for Joel Embiid to make good on him being the legit superstar player that he is if he's able to carry this team during that time of an absence. But I just wanted to get your take about what your expectations are for him specifically coming off of that suspension.
Yeah, you would hope he's in a situation in space to go ahead and not necessarily block out the noise, but there has to be some level of let me prove who I am. Let me remind y'all why I am a proverbial MVP candidate. That's the walk he needs to be kind of stepping into, as we say, standing on that business of the Philadelphia 76ers and digging them out of a very, very deep hole that now all the injuries have cost them, well below the play-in line, I think, currently as we record. So he is the focal point, both offensively and defensively. But with Paul George also ramping back up, he has some help and assistance. So when you're asking me what are my expectations, it's everything I just said, but I think it needs to be in stages because I don't think he can go back out here in game one, drop 50 and 15 and expect, okay, you know what I mean? Like I would be very surprised if that's what it is, especially I would assume there'd be some semblance of a minutes restriction kind of coming back into that. So working himself back into shape, getting the confidence back in his body and his limbs that he also has been kind of struggling with, I think mentally, to get over that proverbial hump, and the teammates alongside him, allowing him to do what he can do, but also still continuing to pick up the proverbial slack. Great opportunity for Jared McCain at the point guard spot, with Maxey also being out, and obviously PG trying to get his legs underneath him as well too. So that's what I would hope would happen, and he could avoid any missteps in the media or anything that has nothing to do with basketball.
All right, so I'm just going to say it plainly, Shaw. Everything that you said makes absolute sense. The one thing that I would add to this is the opportunity for Joel Embiid to change the narrative about the kind of player that I think he wants to be in this modern NBA. I don't think we're ever like normally we would always say your numbers can kind of quiet out all of the noise and speculation about the kind of player that you are, the franchise player that you see yourself as, and in comparison to what the organization has. But I really do think that this is more about the leadership aspect of Joel Embiid. I think because even in a minutes restriction, Shaw, it should not stymie or it should not negate your responsibility that you are the franchise, right? You are, quote unquote, the process. Everything still filters through you. So how you carry yourself on that basketball court, what you do with those minutes that are given to you, whether they are unrestricted or restricted, goes a long way on whether or not the rest of the guys in that locker room are going to follow your lead and is going to have your back so that you're not shouldering the weight of the media blitz every single time you get up there, because they're going to always keep asking, are you ready? Is things going? You can't do that at the expense of the team still struggling to win games. So to your point, Shaw, my whole emphasis is on the focus of Joel Embiid's mentality, right? How he's carrying himself as he is transitioning and how that resonates with a Paul George, how that resonates with young guys like a Jared McCain. Are they going to come together for him? And that only happens by him showing up for them with the limited time that he is on that court. Sometimes your numbers can always help dispel that. But I think that this is the opportunity where we don't have to question Joel Embiid's leadership as the man in Philly if he handles his business and does things in a mature leadership perspective that allows the team to galvanize around him as he begins to kind of ramp up and get himself ready for the long haul of a season, to your point, that has started off mightily for them struggling to get wins at the early outset of this season.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing more to say other than he's got to go out there and do exactly what you're talking about. Being a leader, and that doesn't necessarily mean all the points and all the rebounds and all the blocks. I think it's again, there's a different aspect of his leadership that his team is probably looking for, given some of the stuff here that Paul George, quite frankly, is probably looking for coming into what he hoped would be a championship situation. And so while they have to deal with some other injuries as well, he's got to just figure out, hey, if I'm 20 minutes a night, what does that look like in terms of because he's always going to be the orbit, I think offensively. So there's going to be a lot of attention to pay to him, even if he's hobbled. But can he make his teammates better, both on the floor and off the floor, in terms of the locker room presence, and get this Sixers season kind of back on track?
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. All right, let's get right into some of these news notes and injuries taking place. And man, so many. So we just finished talking about Tyrese Maxey, right hamstring injury. He's going to be out for 2 weeks. Chet Homlgren, OKC, off to a torrid start for the season. He's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks with a hip fracture. I'm not sure if people saw that nasty fall that he took the other night. I'm sure it felt obviously it felt a whole lot worse than it actually looked. It's kind of weird because it didn't seem like it was that bad given the way that he went up, but how he came down. Then when you keep replaying it over and over again, even that fractured my my train of thought about thinking about how bad that is. So he's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks. Ja Morant is going to be on a week-to-week basis because he's suffering a hip injury. Zion Williamson for the Pelicans out indefinitely with a hamstring. And now Kevin Durant is also going to be out for 2 weeks with a calf strain. So a bevy of injuries. And these are star players. These are guys that are really, really, really off to great starts with their teams respectively. Even though when you look at the Pelicans and you look at the Sixers, they're the ones who obviously have suffered the most because the teams are off to slow starts. But if you're OKC, if you're, the Memphis Grizzlies, Kevin Durant losing your star players like that, I'm quick to ask you on this, Shaw, of these guys that I've mentioned and of the teams that we're talking about, who's going to be impacted the most by their stars' loss?
Unfortunately, it continues to be those Pelicans. Because as we alluded to last week when we were talking about, CJ McCollum went out and Herb Jones was already out, and so I think, and Trey Murphy, I guess, is supposed to come back, this week.
And DeJounte Murray is out, right?
DeJounte Murray still remains out, right? Yeah. Jordan Hawkins is out. So 6 of their top 7 guys are out with injury. And now the main guy, Zion Williamson, is going to be out. And in some ways, that's kind of old hat for the New Orleans Pelicans, but not in the same aspect with all these other guys being out at the exact same time. Yeah,
it is what it is.
It's tough. So for me, especially with the season, they had 2 losses to the Trailblazers already this season. So for me, the Pelicans are going to struggle the absolute most, because at least Zion was there, at least Brandon Ingram was there. So 2 focal points, that can get you some wins here and there. Now it's kind of just BI manning the proverbial ship with a bunch of good but not great players, Jose Alvarado's and stuff like that of the world.
I'll tell you this though, Shaw. It hurts more because of the way that Brandon Ingram is struggling right now. And there's nothing that says that he's suffering from any kind of lingering injury. He's just struggling. He's not, he's shooting a low percentage at this particular time frame, even as we speak. I still think that there are struggles in his ability when he was paired up with Zion Williamson for the time that they were on the floor, that they just don't give themselves enough spacing and have vibed really well to pair off each other. It'll be Brandon Ingram has a decent night, Zion Williamson struggling. Zion Williamson dominates, Brandon Ingram is nowhere to be found. And listen, this has been the problem with the Pelicans, even when the both of them have been healthy. It's that they just can't get both of those guys to be able to perform at such a high level at the same time. And then you couple that with McCollum, you couple that with Murray. Neither one of these guys are on the basketball court to help facilitate and get these guys at the best position possible for them to play at a high level. You're right. The Pelicans, to me, are going to be the odd man out of all of this, because at some point when you do get all of these guys on the floor at the same time, how will Willie Green be able to get them all on the same page we don't even know how many more games will be left, and we don't know how far back, they're going to wind up being, because they're in arguably such a tough division when you've got the Mavericks and you've got the Rockets and you've got the Grizzlies, right? Like, and the Spurs, like, room for error for the Pelicans is very, very small, very small. And losing Williamson, who they still believe is the guy, and they play in such a fashion where he's still the guy, to not have that, you got to have guys like Brandon Ingram to step in and really help, stabilize the ship until you get one or two of those starters that you have back on your roster.
Yeah, it's just not a situation that I think Green, he's got to be tired, I think, at this stage. Like, it's consistently having to patchwork his lineups together, because nobody can stay healthy, but least of all Zion. So it's one of those situations, hey, stop me if you've heard this one before. But they have some, again, decent role players that are trying to fill the gap. Haven't taken a look at what their schedule is, but I mean, it's going to be an extended period here. So like, you're looking at a 5-game stretch versus, a 15 or 20 game stretch is not the same situation. So, and this Pelicans team is already below 500. So Ingram, I think, is playing okay. He's shooting 48%, 35 from 3, not amazing, but good, right around league average. But I think it's the way that he's getting some of the stuff, because he is forcing some shots. He is a decent, tough shot maker, especially from mid-range. But like, they need more. They need more. And I think even getting a guy like Jordan Hawkins back quickly will do so much for them. I think offensively, it's just somebody who can take some of the pressure off of what BI has to do, because now you're miscasting Alvarado as a guy who needs to like score more often in addition to play make. Again, but hopefully the addition of Trey Murphy coming back, presumably so this week, will give them something else to kind of hang their hat on. And then from either standpoint, though, OKC, with Holmgren, remember Hartenstein is already out as well too, so that front court is super thin. Yeah, I mean, so you're looking at Lou Dort probably having to play some 5 here until the other Jalen Williams comes back. He hasn't even touched the court this year, to my knowledge. So they need him to kind of get back into tow. We're not at the point, I believe, of 10-day contracts yet. So there's nobody they can kind of bring up. So they can go into their G League and kind of maybe do something else there. But they're going to have to figure this out, because if Hartenstein's still out for another couple of weeks and Holmgren's going to be out for roughly 2 months before he's even reevaluated, that puts OKC season and their hopes at a number 1 seed in very much jeopardy, despite the hot start that they got out to begin the year.
Yeah, the bigger concern, to your point, Shaw, when it comes to OKC is how they can, compensate, because the whole idea of having Hartenstein is to allow them to have a legitimate big, to take that pressure off of Holmgren, who's been, manning the responsibilities of playing more of that 5 role. It allows them to go big when they need to, and it allows Holmgren, I think, to, come off and be away from the ball, because he is, he shoots the 3 a heck of a lot better than Hartenstein. But I think there's just sometimes where you got to be able to strategically switch things up, and the matchups will play better if a guy like Hartenstein's on there. Remember, Hartenstein is arguably one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA. And while Chet Homlgren is somebody who's still kind of feeling his way out, he's there for defensive purposes. He's helped stabilizes that team defensively. I think, to me, Shaw, the more interesting one is losing Kevin Durant. We may not speak to this, but I really think it puts in focus, how deep is this Phoenix Suns team that we said this is what it comes down to. No one's going to argue with the legitimacy of their starting lineup, with the exception of Nurkic. But this can, given the fact that the Suns are out to really a great start this season, losing this version of Kevin Durant, who's just been great on both sides of the basketball, I will wonder, how will they be able to navigate that, not having him there? I know people are going to look at, the greatest offensive player, but he really, really has helped the Suns defensively, which, again, is something a little uncommon when it comes to the Budenholzer, regime, because he's so offensive minded. But there are some defensive improvements that we've seen from the Phoenix Suns team, especially in the 4th quarter, that has allotted them this kind of record that they have right now. So it'll be interesting to see who steps in and assumes the same kind of defensive principal responsibilities that we've seen exhibited by Kevin Durant, that has definitely helped this team.
Yeah, I mean, I challenge the notion that I think Bud's still primarily more of a defensive guy than an offensive guy. But he's gotten their offense to have some semblance of organization to begin the year. So Shams tweeted it out, and I was like, MVP type caliber for a season for Durant. I was like, what? Really? I mean, but that's how much we take Durant for granted, I think, at this stage. And, they're off to an amazing start. So, the almost 28 a game, the 6 rebounds, almost 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, the 1.5 blocks, as you're alluding to, in the defensive end, with 55% from the floor and 43 from 3. Like, that guy is uber efficient. And he's getting stuff done over there. So, yeah, we just kind of take KD for granted. So 2 weeks isn't the end of the world, and hopefully it's not something that is going to linger. And it allows Devin Booker, who has been struggling, to regain some form here. And Beal, this is why you have these high level guys. Beal now can kind of take a proverbial step up offensively. But I think, as you're alluding to, the defensive side, where KD was bringing that switchability, that's not going to be so easily replaced, in the 2 weeks that KD's out.
Yeah, I like the idea that, Shams is, trying to quote unquote change the narrative about what we consider as MVP. Now that he's got, you know what I'm saying, Wojnarowski, you know what I'm saying?
Well, he also might be trying to smooth over the ESPN relationship, because Stephen A and KD, that's icy. To put it mildly. So, maybe, like those platitudes of MVP caliber season, maybe, and KD is checking the media. So, maybe that stuff that
you got to gas him up, gas him up properly, right? You know what I'm saying? Don't give him the unleaded, give him the diesel, baby. Give him the diesel. But in fairness, if we're talking about it in totality of what he means to that team and the success of that team, I'm there with you. But I'm sorry, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm watching what Nikola Jokic is doing right about now. Like, I'm just saying, like, what?
Jokic is another level. So.
Okay. All right. Just so that we're clear. You know what I'm saying? Just so that we're clear. You want to put him in there because you just need to put bodies in the conversation for MVP? No doubt. But if you're trying to win me over, nah, man, you're good. You are a senior insider. You got the inside scoop to everything. You ain't got to sell me on nothing. You are there, brother. You are there. But man, don't be trying to sell me on some KD MVP just yet. Not yet. Need a larger sample size, and somehow Nikola Jokic like falls off the map before that happens. So
agreed.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, Sean and I will get down on the Golden State Warriors. Dub Nation. Is there a resurgence? Is there confidence with the type of play that we're seeing from Steph Curry's and his peoples? We will get into that. And then remember, hey, we got to be impressed. We're always the type of people we deserve to be impressed by some of the things that we see in the NBA. So do not walk away too far, because we got our segment Impress Me. But first, the Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time? Here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BASELINE. That's code BASELINE for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problems in gambling. Call 8887-897777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. More Baseline, Callie Warrenshaw. Don't go anywhere. We're back, Callie Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast, and time now to talk about the Golden State Warriors. G-Dubs, man, off to a very impressive start, winning 7 out of the first 10 basketball games. And even though Shaw, they recently have taken a couple of L's on their road trip, one cannot argue that there's something different about what we're seeing from this Golden State Warriors team. Certainly, we're not seeing the shoulder or the burden of the team resting on the shoulders of Steph Curry. I think that you can probably make the argument that given his numbers, he's slowly, creeping up to what his normal numbers are. He's, kind of ramping up there. So he's not even nearly at peak Steph Curry levels just yet. Draymond Green, his numbers are not probably nearly as what I think most would have expected, given that there's no longer the Splash Brothers with Draymond. But his contributions and what he's been able to do while being on the basketball court has really helped elevate and given a platform for some of their role players and stars as well, too, which has yielded the kind of success. Now, most people are going to probably question, their schedule that has afforded them this hot start to the start of the beginning of the season. But I think one can surmise, like, listen, you play the teams that are in front of you, you win the games that you're able to win, and the results has allowed you to be in the position that you're in.
I think that is the biggest footnote, if you will, of their season is the overall schedule. But they have 2 signature wins, in these first 10 games here, beating Boston in Boston, and then shellacking now the Chet Homlgren list. OKC Chet actually gets injured in that game. So what seems to be true is that this is a defensive-minded team. That Warriors defense is back, and they figured out a way to get more guys involved. Curry's only averaging 22 a game right now, not 28, 29, or whatever the case would be. They're really sharing the basketball. 9 guys on this team are averaging roughly 8 points or 8 points per game or more. And that's showing a level of depth, for this Warriors team. And they have a pretty amazing, I think, plus differential right now. Because they've really not blown the doors off some teams, when they've got some wins. I think it's 3rd in net rating, as we record. So a lot is going right for this Warriors team. We can't go this far, and it's interesting because you talked about Curry as we should, talked about Draymond as we should, but this isn't happening without the contributions of Buddy Hield, who, while I think was just like, oh, it's great, they got Buddy Hield, and he'll be like Klay Thompson light. He's been absolutely lights out, and somebody that, I think I even had on the impress me list, but I think at this point is like, well, he's more than a high level role player. Like he's a contributing factor to this run here at 18 a game and almost at 49% from the 3-point line on volume, the volume of attempts that he's taking. Did not realize he was going to be this plug and play going into this Warrior system. And all that does is allow Curry to not have to do so more. Yes, he's already had a little minor injury to begin the year. But this level of depth throughout the roster is also setting him up, I think, as Windhorst might have said, for a potential trade, for if something does become available, because they have a lot of good contributing NBA guys. But I have to give credit to what Steve Kerr is doing here. 3rd in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating, 3rd in net rating, 8-2, 2 big wins against, 2 teams that are predicted to be in the finals right now in Boston and OKC.
I think one of the things that really stand out to me about this team, Shaw, is that they seem to have more confidence in their role players than we've seen in previous years. I know you're not high, on Jonathan Kuminga, right? And the funny part about this is you just can't teach athleticism at times.
Sure.
But at the same time, you've got to find a way to let that athleticism be an advantage rather than a disadvantage for you. Now, maybe this is, a great opportunity for us to really appreciate what Steve Kerr is doing by moving him to the bench, right? And allowing what we naturally come to know about Warriors basketball is the ability to move the ball and get the quick shot. Move the ball, get the quick shot. Move the ball and get the quick shot. So ultimately, if Jonathan Kuminga is not somebody who goes out and rebounds the basketball, doesn't know how to rebound the basketball, if you're putting that onus and responsibility on Draymond Green and Trace Jackson Davis, I'm completely cool with that because they understand their activity is what helps give more opportunities for their shooters, right? For the Buddy Hields, for the Steph Currys, right? And it's just amazing how collectively we're beginning to see the maturation of the role players take part. I think that we've seen iterations of this because Steve Kerr loves to do this and tease us with the idea that some of these guys are good players, legit players. But he has managed this roster pretty nicely. Okay. And I'm not saying that like the schedule was one where, this team we thought were so bad that they probably would be under 500 or anything. But I definitely think that we've gone through these iterations not really buying into whether or not that what they're doing is sustainable, because we don't know the potential of what those role players could actually mean to this team. And because most times Steve Kerr operates only utilizing maybe 7, 8, maybe 6, 7, 8 players, he's going as much as using almost 10, 11 players through the course of a game unabashedly. You know what I mean? Like unashamedly. He's like, yo, I'm going to go with whoever the hottest hand is. I'm going to ride that person until they fizzle out. And then I'm throwing in the next person in there. And that person seems to be ready to go. And they pick up where they leave off. But to your point, Shaw, the calling card is the effort that is afforded them to do what they're doing offensively can only happen when they do it defensively. And the fact that the Warriors are back to playing that kind of basketball where their defense can complement what the offense produces has given them this stretch of games where we're actually saying, hey, this is really a good basketball team that people shouldn't take lightly. Whether it's sustainable or not, don't know. Certainly helpful now that most of the Western Conference have of teams of rashes of injuries from their quality players. But then it really opens up the door for us to say, well, which team has the deeper roster that you can pull out and say, put somebody in there to help sustain. Like if the Warriors lose Steph Curry, which they did in a course of some of these games that they played in the early outside of the season, they still managed to win those games because the people that they put in there all took over certain aspects of what Steph Curry brings to that team. And they were able to play good defensively and score just enough points to have enough scores on that basketball team for them to be able to eke out those kind of wins. And that's all that you could ask for through the course of an 82-game season.
Yeah, 13 guys on this roster now averaging, 13 minutes or more, or 12 minutes or more, excuse me. Gary Payton and Lindy Waters III kind of in the bottom of that, probably due to some of the early injuries, especially with Curry. So those minutes maybe got bumped up, but Curry is legitimately running like an 11-man roster out there. Like, he's going 11 deep on a regular basis. Right. Nobody on this team is over 30 minutes again. Curry's at 28.3, leads the team. Draymond at 27.2, Andrew Wiggins at 26.5. So it's masterful. They've had some blowouts, as I've said. They've had a softer schedule, so that has contributed to maybe some of this. But the sustainability and the role definement seems to be their sustainability is what we need to see in the question as the season continues to kind of march on here for them. But at this point of the season, I'm wrong about who they actually are. I didn't think the defense would be this good. While I look at the roster and see, decent guys, especially you talk about Kuminga and his athleticism, I like D'Anthony Melton a lot, in terms of being able to be a role player. I just didn't expect this from Buddy Hield, like for him to be this on fire. And I just didn't know what version of Andrew Wiggins we were going to get. And, if he's anything like the
but let's be clear about that part too, Shaw. Sorry to interrupt you on that, but let's be clear about this. Andrew Wiggins is nothing like the 2020 version of Andrew Wiggins that the Warriors had helped them win that NBA championship. He's still, nothing compared to where that is. Yeah. But I will say this, and again, give credit to Steve Kerr. He is utilizing him, and he's out there on the court for the requisite number of minutes to maximize what he needs to give the Warriors, right? No more, no less. I don't know how he's calculating that math, but the math is mathing right now with the way that the Warriors are using Andrew Wiggins. And so to your point, let's not shun the idea that come trade deadline, if there are possibilities to move players like Hield and Wiggins, it's not as if that they got rid of those guys, that they don't still have players who are already assuming those responsibilities and roles that we haven't seen on national television and that we've seen through the course of the games that has given them this winning record, where they can easily be replaceable.
Well, I'm glad you took it there in that regard. So when it comes to the ability for them to potentially make a move, they are going to have to get off of, well, it's Wiggins, the only sizable piece that they're willing to kind of give up. And that's because he has a large contract, right? But you're not trading Curry, you're not trading Draymond, I think, at this stage of their careers. But Wiggins seems to be the piece. that's not that attractive. I don't care what they say. Like, it's just not that attractive. So unless you're attaching Pods to that, unless you're attaching Moody or Kuminga to that, what are we really talking about? So that's where I would kind of rebuff some of those, like, oh, they're most positioned in essence. And Windhorst knows a lot more than me. He's deeply connected. But I'm like, well, history has shown us that they haven't really wanted to do anything significant. They feel like they can Danny Ainge each one of their trades per se, or do what they did to get Wiggins, which was a steal and a half, for D'Angelo Russell, and they ended up getting a first round pick out of it as well too. That pick ends up being Wiseman, so they blew that. But nevertheless, this Golden State team has got to figure out, okay, who's really a keeper, or do we ride this out as currently constructed and just see how good we are? I think they're going to come back to the pack a little bit here. But I do think they're going to be active in trying to make some moves to get as another significant piece. But I'm dubious as to who that could potentially be, given their recent history in terms of the rumor mills about who they're actually willing to give up.
I think that, listen, remember, the Golden State Warriors made moves, a few years ago to position themselves when they didn't think that they had the opportunity to do that when Klay Thompson had suffered, his injury. And it was a risk, but it was somewhat of a low risk. This to me is a risk that is not, again, it's something around a low risk for the Warriors. You keep Wiggins. He's not what, not even 30? He's not even 30 years old, right? He's still relatively young. Okay. Andrew Wiggins understands this. He understands that if he stays with the Warriors, he's probably not going to be relied upon the same way that he was with them the last couple of years. But at the same time, if he plays well enough, he obviously is going to be attractive for anyone that does want to go all in if they see that potential. And I'm speaking of teams that are probably like play-in worthy, right? That probably may not have recognized that they have this. Think about like maybe the Charlotte Hornets, or think of, what I'm saying? It's teams, or maybe the Orlando Magic. Just thinking about teams that realize that there's that window that they can still be in because the team arguably still good enough. It's just that they've taken too many losses from their starting lineup, and they need someone who they know as a veteran can be a starter, can certainly help that team in that sort of thing. And if you're the Warriors,
but there's nothing that the Warriors can get back from any one of those teams that would make sense for them, like even to give up Wiggins per se. I think the pipe dream that anybody might have about Wiggins going somewhere, I think what you're saying is right on brand. He's not going to go somewhere, excuse me, and be some 22, 23 point per game, like savior, if you will. He's doing right now is like peak him being a good defender, guy who scores in the mid-teens, if you will, get you some rebounds, and every now and then he kind of, is robust. But which one of those kind of struggling teams, if you will, has a piece that would make sense to even give Golden State or to trade, for a Wiggins here? That's why I'm so confused about the options on trade for them.
I get it. I think the bigger question is, and maybe that's something where we probably have to get somebody on the show who can help read the tenor in the room, so to speak, about where the Warriors management sees this roster moving forward, right? Because if you're the Golden State Warriors, you're not trading Andrew Wiggins for a future piece. You got to trade him for someone that's going to have an immediate effect to help fill in whatever holes may become present while you have this window of Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Maybe less more about Draymond Green and more so about Steph Curry. But if that is your core guy, and this team is still an above 500, they're still a middle of the pack playoff bound type of team, you got to put something there that is going to be like, this is going to help us from a matchup perspective. Because now we're going to say, all right, Steph, you carry us the way through while the rest of these guys kind of fall in line and fall in suit. I'm just saying that, like, the dynamic of having Andrew Wiggins, while it sounds nice, if he is a tradable piece and the Warriors are in position that they can get something to help shore themselves up from a matchup perspective, again, maybe that's the way that management is thinking, not so much the fact that if they're trying to get back a piece, it's something for the future, so to speak. Like, whatever they're trying to do is to help whatever they begin to see as deficiencies that is not allowing them to stay in the pack or win games, as long as they have not fallen off completely.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I just can't find a team. You look at Portland, they can't trade Lauri Markkanen, so that's done. So don't even look over there. It can't happen just contractually. So is there something in Portland? I mean, I mean, Wiggins for what? I don't even know.
Like, or Utah? I'm sorry, you said Portland. Are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm jumping back and forth. Utah, like Markin is the guy that everybody knows that they want. They can't get him this year, so that's out of the question. So you shift to Portland as a team that's struggling. Might be willing to sell some parts. Washington, but who's there? You're not bringing Jordan Poole back. Does Kuzma for Wiggins?
As long as they don't trade for another guard.
I mean,
I'm trying to help out the Warriors. Stay away from.
That's tough.
It's affinity for guards. Like, yeah, I got to trade someone. Let me go back and bring back another guard. And stop trading for guards.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a wing. So the most viable maybe is if Chicago decides like, hey, Zach LaVine has shown enough, and they want to move off of that. Then you get some scoring punch in there and some playmaking with Zach to kind of come to that team, maybe. But I just don't see a lot of moves with Wiggins being the centerpiece of the deal. And if you can convince somebody that Kuminga is the star that he thinks he is, that's going to have to be the piece. They can't hold on to Pods, Wiggins, Moody, and Kuminga and feel like, okay, they can go and get somebody of significant value. Like, I just don't see the path there.
Yeah, listen, I completely get where you're coming from. And this is part of the reason why I thought it was an interesting conversation. So we definitely want to hear from those, saying Warriors fans and stuff. Are you feeling good that you're seeing this early level of success? Or is there a cause for trepidation? Like, pump the brakes a little bit. Maybe we're not as good as we think we are. And maybe we'll be able to assess that as we go maybe past the Christmas holidays, where we really begin to see those stretch of games kind of ramp up against, teams that play against the Golden State Warriors. But I do find it impressive, the early start of the season, that this Warriors team is where they are right now. And it's kind of opened up some possibilities and a little bit of chatter, as they say. You're tuned to The Baseline. Lee Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're going to talk about these dudes that they are impressive, therefore they oppress we. They impress we. I'm sorry, did I say oppress we? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go back slave trade days. But they will impress we. So hopefully they will impress you as well too. But first, NBA League Pass is here. Are you craving nonstop hoop action? NBA League Pass is your ticket to the ultimate basketball experience. Enjoy live games, on-demand replays, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content across a variety of devices. With NBA League Pass, you'll get more games. We're talking regular season and select playoff matchups, more features, including multi-view angles, in-depth stats, and behind-the-scenes stories, more access. Catch your favorite teams and players anytime, anywhere. Stay up with the NBA like The Baseline does. League Pass is for fans who live the game. Sign up now and type @link.nba.com/LP19MG. More Baseline, Lee Warren Shaw. Don't go anywhere. All right, Lee Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time now for Impress Me. Actually, it should be Impress We. But we're okay with that. No worries. Yeah. A lot of guys right now, Shaw. A lot of guys. Them no worry we, but them impress we. Okay. I'll let you rattle off a few dudes who have caught your eye early outset of this NBA season that have impressed you.
Yeah, I like, when role players, guys who are projected to be 7th and 8th guys, maybe even 9th and 10th guys, kind of surprise, or rookies who we weren't really paying attention to, maybe didn't have the greatest runs in summer league, and all of a sudden the lights come on here during like the main time of the season. So I've kind of watched the league, and they're not necessarily deep cuts, but they're not the guys that you're going to know off rip. So Trey Mann in Charlotte, so good. Just coming off the bench for them, I think an early 6th man of the year type candidate potentially. Was in OKC, just kind of shows you what Presti's doing with his draft, and he just ran out of minutes, just didn't have enough bodies or minutes for him to play in. So they traded him in a deal that they regret now, and for Gordon Hayward last year. Yves Maxey from the New Orleans Pelicans getting an opportunity because of all the injuries that we talked a little bit about earlier, but playing, some big energy minutes at the 5 spot for that New Orleans Pelicans team, was kind of like pushed Tice out of the rotation. I mean, Tice is still getting minutes, but they want to see Maxey play a little bit more than Tice, I think, at this stage. And a guy like Gradey Dick in Toronto, averaging 19 a game, I think it's a little bit inflated because Emmanuel Quickley started the season on the shelf. RJ Barrett started the season on the shelf. Scottie Barnes got injured. And so now while Barrett and Quickley are back, Barnes is still out. So I don't know if Grady's still going to be at this robust play, but he's doing more than just scoring the basketball. He's showing a little bit of some playmaking shots and some rebounding, in addition to being able to shoot the three. So those are guys that I'm really, really enjoying there. And the final one I'll kind of touch on. He's actually getting a lot of love because he played well in the preseason. That's Ryan Dunn in Phoenix. I'm going to get some opportunity, especially with KD being out here now. More of a defensive guy. You know, the three-point shooting doesn't seem to be as sustainable as some people would hope to begin the year. But he's earned Bud's trust here. And I think that's a big thing for a rookie.
Yeah, really impressive list of guys that you've rattled off, especially Scottie Pippen Jr. Well, I thought we saw this coming. It was interesting to me. I said, I don't understand why this guy is not getting enough run. Certainly, he has taken what he did in Summer League and he has ran with it. And clearly, Jenkins sees something in him. He is such a good safety chip, as far as him being such a legitimate backup for Ja Morant. I think you couldn't have asked for a better complementary player, given the fact that because Ja Morant, minus the fact that, his injury suddenly happened, but given the fact that this allowed Jenkins to not, put a lot of strain on the number of minutes that, Ja Morant was going to basically have to take on, for this team, it's a good balance, and then this way you can help ramp him up. Get him back into where he's in MVP form, but you're not rushing him. But again, because of the success of the Memphis Grizzlies, the early side of the season, a lot of that is because of the contributions of Scottie Pippen Jr. So I love that. Santi Aldama, man, when Jaren Jackson Jr. was on the mend, right? He stepped in and he assumed that 4-5 role, was shooting the three at a high clip. And even with Jaren Jackson Jr. coming back, because he was on minutes restrictions, his contributions have been immense. So, while the Memphis Grizzlies, again, they're one of those teams, Shaw, Jenkins is not afraid to go in his bag and pull dudes out to give them opportunity, for some run. And these guys are taking advantage of it. So I love the combination of those two guys. If they continue to maintain, we talk about these injuries that plague other teams that could impact them. The Memphis Grizzlies, I think, will be okay. And we'll see whether or not it's sustainable for them to get what they're getting from their core players. A couple other people that I thought have really impressed me. I told you about that dude, Benedict. You know what I'm saying? My man, ex Benedict. He's giving teams the holidays. Okay, right now. You know what I'm saying? He's giving them sauce to go what he would go with his game, man. He has been so impressive, especially with the fact that Tyrese Halliburton has been struggling at the early outset of this season. Now, Tyrese is starting to come around. We saw an impressive performance that he put together against the New York Knicks. Seems like he seems to wake up every time he plays the Knicks. But that does not happen without the contributions that we're seeing from Benedict Mathurin, man. That kid, people need to watch him. Watch for this kid, I don't know whether or not that combination is going to play. I'm really trying to see how dangerous the Indiana Pacers can possibly be. But if he stays healthy and he is contributing the way that he has right now, he's averaging close to 20 points per game. So right now it's career high, even though this is like his third year. But if he stays healthy, he arguably can be the most dangerous player that elevates the Indiana Pacers space as far as people taking them seriously among contenders in the Eastern Conference. That's if everybody else is back to the level of play that they were at last year. And the timing is never perfect, right? Because it's damn NBA Cup time. So this is what happened last year when the Pacers went on that run and put everybody on notice. Maybe we see the same thing here. So it would be very interesting to see if Benedict Mathurin, helps push the Pacers once again to be a part of one of those Final Four teams for the NBA Cup. My last person, Shaw, my man, Jose Alvarado, the Bandit. Okay. Hey, listen, with the injuries that the Pelicans have suffered, he has really he's grabbed the baton and he is going with it, or grabbed the ball and, he's running with it, man. He's really doing as good a job as you can ask of any guy in his role to step up and give you quality minutes at that point guard position. Everything now is all career highs right now, given the fact that there's nobody they've got at the guard position. And I'm sure at some point when Murray and McCollum come back, his minutes will go down. But it's hard to imagine that if you're Willie Green, that you don't emphasize more of keeping him out there, because I really think that he's one of the few players that helps galvanize this Pelicans teams that still feel a little uncertain about where they are in the grand scheme of things against everyone else in the Western Conference. So, he's a spark plug. He's the kind of guy that if you've given him these minutes and he's made these kind of contributions, scoring, defense, everything like that, you diminish it because you got a couple of star guys coming back. I wonder. I hope that isn't the case, but I'm really been impressed with the way that Jose Alvarado has stepped in and assumed a lot of the boatload of minutes, has assumed a lot of the guard responsibilities, and has basically stabilized this team as best as possible, given the struggles that this Pelicans team has had the early part of the season.
I mean, Alvarado is somebody that I think people do know and recognize when he gets plus minutes, even, what he was able to do in the Olympics with Team Puerto Rico. He's a good basketball player. And I think Mathurin as well, too, not necessarily in the role player mode. So I think you cheated a little bit, but I'm going to let you slide.
I cheated? Oh, come on.
I think these are guys that, I don't know. Many people were worried about Ryan Dunn or Yves Messi, coming into the season. I think, Alvarado and Mathurin were expected to make some impact. Hold on, but with Mathurin, it's important that he is back in the fold. And you've given me a great idea that I'm going to tease here right now, because as you talked about somebody who I don't like as much, I wonder what the NBA Masters would say. Would it be much of a debate if you were starting a franchise, a little who you got, Benedict Mathurin or Jonathan Kuminga? That's something that I think we should discuss on our next show.
That is spite. That's on some Giannis, want to shake the hand and pull it back kind of nonsense, right? So who are you? Giannis and I'm Jalen? Is that what that is?
We just teasing that. Okay. We gonna tease that, and we're gonna come back with that at some point later.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to get my notes together, because I'm gonna have to hit you with the fire on that one, because you're the one who called it out, just so that you know.
I did. I'm not backing away. I'm standing tall in that joint.
But listen, in all honesty, when we first had come up with the idea of having this conversation about Impress Me, I wanted to talk about Nick Richards, and then lo and behold, his behind got injured as well too, right?
He's always hurt. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the list is going to be ever changing, and obviously it's a conversation that will continue to roll out. So for me, guy didn't talk about, but it's really like the entire Grizzlies bench, just a bunch of kind of misfits. What's this guy doing? And if you would have told me going into the season that Jay Huff would be averaging more points than a Luke Kennard or even a Marcus Smart, I would have first said, who's Jay Huff? So let alone the fact that he's averaging 10.
I would have said, where's Marcus Smart? That's what I said.
So they've done an amazing job in getting that done. And, I went to Memphis Grizzlies opening night. Jay Huff reverse dunks are a vibe. And so I just kept saying, who is this guy with the receding hairline, who looks like he might be from wherever, somewhere in the Midwest, and just yamming on people, and then has the balls and the audacity, to stretch the floor and shoot the three ball as well, too. Really, really great story there.
I got a new nickname for Ruff. For Huff, excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's got to have one, right? He's going to be earning one definitely for the year.
Rough, rugged, and raw, baby. Huff, rugged, and raw. There you go. Huff, rugged, and raw.
I mean, other than the fact that he's tall, I don't know that you would mistake him, for an NBA player if he was just walking about. He's just like, who's that guy? But he is hooping. And I hope he's able to continue that momentum that he's garnered here in Memphis so far, man. Great job by the Grizzlies with their bench overall.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Another great episode, my brother. Another great episode. Good stuff all together. Obviously, the one thing that we hope for, especially as we're entering into NBA Cup season, right? Emirates NBA Cup is happening. Yep. As we're recording this, is that a lot of these guys, these superstars, some of them are going to probably miss the first couple weeks of the tournament play, but hopefully we'll be able to return to help make exciting basketball available for us during NBA Cup season. Albeit, though, I don't need them being rushed back for them to participate in this if it's at the expense of us not having them in best condition possible when we get towards Christmas holiday and on the back end of, the NBA season, which to me, I think because of the tightness of the races that I think will take place and the availability of and the viability of most of these teams who are going to be entering in the conversation of the playoff chase, I want to make sure that they're all, everyone has got their rostered up. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yes, sir. Big week. So, we get Embiid back So that's amazing, you know, especially as you're talking about the NBA Cup. Clay's return to Golden State is like kicks off the NBA Cup, you know, on the Tuesday evening as we're recording, you know, just a day or so before that game. So I'm excited for this, right? And seeing, you know, these audacious courts. Let's kind of go with that, you know, and see what that brings into the fold. You know, if they've improved some of the eye tests.
I think we should have an episode, Shaw. I actually will do this. For maybe next week. We will give our grades for the best and the worst courts. Yeah. We'll do a ranking. We'll do a ranking.
That'll be very Instagrammable.
So top 5 dead or alive. Here we go.
Yeah.
Top 5 dead or
good
alive.
Stuff.
Like
good stuff. Well, I hope our fans, listeners will tap in. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know who's impressed you so far throughout the course of the NBA season. You know, only 10 to 12 games in, depending on which team you're talking about. And are the Golden State Warriors truly back? We're definitely interested in that conversation, and just hopefully we can get some health, get a nice string of health with no injuries for all these players, so we can enjoy the great NBA basketball that we are know and love.
Knock on wood. I was trying to knock on the wood, but I didn't want to disrupt your thought. Once again, we appreciate everybody for hopping on board. For the Baseline, Callie Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do, and we'll catch up with you next time.